so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. I'm really excited to have you all here. We have a great session prepared for you. Today we're going to focus on the art of form building, like Elahe said. And while we go through this process, if there are any questions, please don't be afraid to put those questions in the question bar part of the Go-To webinar. Elahe will be asking any questions that she doesn't have the answer to. She'll be asking me, as well as answering those questions throughout the time. All right. So I don't know if Elahe said this or if I already said this, but my name is Berit Johannesson, and I am a solutions engineer here at iForm Builder. And a lot of what I do is just working with the customers to make sure that they are able to build out successful projects and are able to collect good data, because here at iForm Builder, we believe that good data saves your world, and we're lucky enough to be a part of that. So to start our training topics, today we're going to focus on best practices for form building, our form building golden rules, the different element input types that iForm Builder offers you, as well as a quick little form demo. And while we go through that form demo, if you want to open up your Form Builder account and start playing around in there as well and following along, that's great. And we're going to end today with just a review and a closing. So we're going to start with those best practices. First things first, with the best practices come some of these tools that we give you here at the iForm Builder community. We support you 110%. And ways that we do that is with our Customer Success Center. This is on a link to our knowledge base, and I'm just going to open up that page so you can see it. So here we are around all the time to answer any questions that you have in this little chat box below. But this is also where you'll see the release notes and our community and a little getting started guide. My favorite part of this whole section, though, is the iForm Builder Academy. This is where I spend a lot of my time, and we put in all the training sessions, recorded sessions that we have, as well as the upcoming sessions. So after today, you'll be able to click on a link from there and get the recording of today's session, so if you ever want to review it. Another best practice here is to follow our release notes. Now, I just showed you where those release notes were located. You do have the option to follow those once you've signed up for the Customer Success Center. And the reason you'd want to do that, of course, is to make sure that you're always aware of everything that is up and coming within the platform. So any bug fixes that have changed, or any new element types that we've added to the iForm Builder platform, as well as any integration options that we've added. So make sure to follow that. And the other one that I have here is the community forum. Now, I didn't click on that link, but if you do go into the community forum, you'll see a couple different great forums that we have going, and one of them being the vote for features. So if you find that you really want something to be a part of the iForm Builder platform and it's not currently there, you're able to post in that community, and if it gets a lot of interaction from other users, then that could be in one of our upcoming releases. So that vote for features forum is really where our platform gets its ideas, as well as we get to see what's a really popular item and what our community wants. And other parts of this best practice with the form building, as well as just using the platform as a whole, is our implementation support. We do offer implementation support to you and your team. So if maybe there's a time that you want us to build the forms for you or train some of your users on the platform, we can do that. And so just drop us an email and we'd be happy to send you more information on that. And the last thing here is to include multiple members of your team to help expand the platform use. So this is a huge concept, just because we don't want you to be alone in your company. We don't want you to just feel like you have to do iForm Builder all by yourself. So include other people and brainstorm, because the more the merrier. All right, so moving on to our best practices. This first one is to use a naming convention. This is huge as far as organization in the form builder goes. If you don't use a naming convention, then your forms could get very disorganized and it'd be hard to find the connection. What you see here is just an example of what I use. I always start with the parent form name and have _P to symbolize that that is the parent form. And then any additional subforms that I have attached to that parent form, I'll name that parent form, the parent form name, and then the subform name, and then _C, so that I understand that that's the child form for that parent form. To have the naming convention, you want to place that in the table name in the edit form properties page. So that table name isn't viewable to the user, and it's just for your form builder account. The next best practice is to always test on all the devices before going live. The reason being is we offer the iForm Builder platform for both iOS and Android devices. And we started with building out the platform with iOS, and so we want to make sure that the Android client is almost has the same functionality as the iOS client, but it's not all the way there. So make sure that you're always testing on both device types. The other point here is that you want to build for the smallest device. So whether your users are using an iPhone or they're using an iPad, you want to make sure that you look at how the form is appearing in that smallest device, just because the iPad or the larger devices will spread out that content, whereas the smallest device that your users are using is how it's all going to be smushed together, essentially. It won't look smushed, so don't get me wrong there, but it is going to be more condensed. If you are interested in seeing what the differences, the different features are between the iOS and our Android devices, we do have a knowledge-based article on that, and that link is here at the bottom. But you're also going to receive a PDF, or this PDF actually, after the session, and you'll be able to go through and click on these links, as well as if you just go into that knowledge base, you can search for the different features, the differences between those features. So another best practice is to add subforms in your form. The reason for this being is that subforms are a great way to break up the information into different groups, not only for your data, but also it helps the users kind of go through the form and know where they are as they go through it. If you're unfamiliar what a subform is, it's essentially another form that you're able to attach to that parent form. So a couple slides ago, I mentioned to you about using a naming convention, and this is really where that naming convention comes into play. You want to be able to identify that parent form and that subforms. What's also great about these subforms is that it allows you to take one-to-many records, and all of those records will be attached to that parent form. One use case that a lot of our team members have found really helpful is to use a subform for photos. That way you can allow your users to take multiple pictures and you don't have to add multiple image elements within your form. We also want you to keep in mind the layout of your form. This is another reason why you'd want to use subforms, is because if you try to add maybe 200 different input types in one singular form, that could be a lot for your user. It's a lot of scrolling down, as well as it takes a little bit longer for the iForm app to sync when there are a lot of elements in that parent form. So you could have maybe 300 different element types, but if they're all split up into different subforms, then it's going to be a lot faster than having 300 elements in a parent form. All right, our next thing here is to help your users recognize their forms on the device. And there's two ways that you can help them recognize which form is which. And one of them being is that you can add a description of that form so the user can see that, as well as using our reference IDs to change the color of that form label. As you can see here, I have a black form. around a black frame around that form. And you can also, using the reference ID 3, you can decide what you want shown in the version info. And in a moment, I'm going to bring up my device and I'm going to show you what a form looks like, and I'll show you where that description is, as well as how you're able to see the different custom property list. All right, so continuing on with our best practices for form building. One is to always have that device handy while you're building out the form so that you can test it on the fly. The other is to use the Clean Local Database. This is a button in the iForm app, and it's in the same section where you log in to the iForm app. Our third best practice on this page is to use multiple browser windows for convenience. I use this all the time, and momentarily I'll show you why I do that. But it's especially helpful for me to be able to look at what I'm collecting in the parent form, what information I'm collecting in the subform. Maybe if I want to use our subform aggregation, then I may need to copy some of the table names and the data column names. So when I'm really adding a lot of smart controls to my form, I want to make sure that I have multiple tabs open so that I can get that information quickly. The next best practice here is just really a reminder that every time you create a form, that form is automatically going to be assigned to you. And so if you're going to be the form builder all the time, then you're going to have all the parent forms and all the subforms assigned to your form building account, and that could be a little bit much. So you may want to go in and unassign the subforms, and that's done under form assignment in the web portal. And the next best practice here for form building is to follow the iForm Builder golden rules, and I have these coming up right here. But before I do that, Elahe, are there any questions coming in?
There are not right now. So.
All right, thank you. Please, you guys, if there are questions, if I'm talking too fast, just let me know, and we will be sure to either I'll slow down or I'll answer your questions. All right, right now I'm just going to bring up my device so that I can show you what that form looks like. So just bear with me. All right, so you should all be able to see a device on my screen right now. And the form that I'm going to go into is this first form. But what I want you to notice is that little icon in the bottom corner. This is the info button. This is where you can see that form description. So here the description is very simple, just training one iForm Builder widgets. But underneath that, you can also customize the version. So this is what it defaults to show. And with the reference IDs, you can select which one of these fields that you want to be shown to your user. All right, up top here, I just have an image label, and that's where I'm able to add our iForm Builder logo. Underneath that, I have the date and time widget. Then just a basic text field. And underneath that text field, you see that I have a read-only element type. So what I actually did is with this form, I'm calling to that previous element to then display a specific field in the read-only. Underneath that, it's a basic option list, and this is the select. Now with the select option list, I usually tell people to try to really think about how many options you're placing there. I try to go no more than 4 unless I'm using numbers. And the big reason for that is if I have maybe 5 options, and maybe some of those options are a little bit long, it may look fine on that iPad, but when I move over to my iPhone, it might be a little too crunched up. And so that's why earlier I said to always test on the smallest device type. Underneath that, you notice that once I pressed yes, great appeared. That's just using some of our smart controls as well. And today we're not really going into smart controls. I'm just telling you where we're using them. In our next session in February 25th, we'll actually go into using the smart controls. So if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to sign up for that session. So this first one was the select option list. Then I have a pick list option list. And underneath that, it's a multi-select option list. So those are 3 different option list types that we have. The multi-select, as you can see, allows you to select more than one option. Then you have the toggle. This is just a little check mark here. If you're using an Android device, it does look a little bit different. It's just a little check box. Beneath that, we have the range. So you can have your user select. In this specific setup, we have it between 1 and 10, but you can set it up at between 0 and maybe 5 or whatever number you'd like to. Then we have a subform here for, excuse me, and that of course is using the smart paging section of the form builder. And I'll take a picture with the camera. So here's our very basic office right now. And then we have one of my favorite form elements, and this is the annotation feature. I think this is one of the best things that we've come out with in the past year. And what you're able to do is you're able to take a picture with the camera, and here I'll just have it going outside. And I can use that photo. And then it asks me if I want to use that as a background image or a floating image. For this instance, I use a background image. And then I'll take another picture and have that set up as the floating image. With that, I can just make it smaller, and then I can maybe I want to write on it. I want to circle that. This is a horrible picture, but you're getting an idea. We have different icons that you can use and move around, and that's the annotation. But with this subform, this is a multi-link subform, so I'm able to press that plus button, and by doing that, I'm able to open a new record. The reason I'm making sure that you are understanding these different widget types that we have is when you go to build a form, you want to make sure that you're able to cut down on human error and get the best results from your users. And so that's part of that is making sure that you understand the different pieces of the platform that we have available to you. Next is just an attachment. And of course, with iForm Builder, you collect data offline. And so right now you're able to see a website, and this is still with that offline environment. So if I tried to go to other pages, that I wouldn't be able to. But what the attachment widget is great for is if there's a PDF online and you want to attach that here, then their user can see that, they can zoom in, and as well as if you have an MOV file, they can also have that here. Underneath that is the assigned to. And these are all the different users that are in your specific account, and you're able to assign this record once it's been completed and synced to the cloud. I can assign it to one of my other team members, so maybe they can add additional information, or they can go through and make sure that I answered everything correctly as well. Then we have our email address. Now what you'll notice is we have with the email address, you place in the beginning of their address, but then you can also select from the domain list that you have, and that's actually an option list. And maybe I didn't have, maybe my email wasn't one of these domains. I could just go to that section below and add that information there. Oops. So then the take a photo, that's our image widget. Then you have audio notes. So you're able to get a voice recording or some kind of recording that you can add to your form. Then the signature. The GPS location, this is extremely helpful for those of you who, if your users are supposed to be capturing the location data maybe at 5 different points in one form, then you would want to have 5 different location widgets within your form. The drawing, this is that annotation that I was telling you about earlier, or that we were able to look into and use earlier as well. The text area, of course, as you can imagine, that's if you want to have a lot of text or you want to allow your user to, put in a longer message. You then have the zip code. This zip code is using a masking widget. So even though it says zip code right now, you could configure some of these masking widgets to meet other needs. I specifically use the Social Security number widget to input birthdays. I find that a lot easier than using the date. And then here we have software and hardware integration. Now this is just one piece of integration that we have with hardware. I don't have a device handy right now, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that too. So those are a lot of our different input types that we have. And so when we get going in just a moment, you are aware of those. So now we have our form building golden rules. The first one, of course, is to test before going live. This is extremely important just because when you do start building out your form some more, you want to make sure that all your JavaScript statements are accurate and that they're working the way that you want them to work. So make sure you have that all set up and tested before you're in an environment that you can't make those changes to your form and before you deploy it to 50 some odd users. The next point here is to make sure that you have a unique data column names that are database friendly. So you may want a label that the user sees to see location. Now that sounds great, but the label can be location, just the data column name can't be location because that is, to us, that's a term that's used in our database, so it's not considered database friendly as data column name. When that happens, then you're going to uncheck a box in the form builder that says based on label. You'll uncheck that box and change the data column name so that it is database friendly. And if you have questions about this, I am going to jump into that in just a moment. So I'm happy to answer those questions as well as go through that in a moment. The third form building golden rule here is to do not change the input type, data size, or encryption of an element on a live form because it will delete the data. That's really important to remember. That's the same thing as, if you're using a select option list and then you decide you want to do a pick list option list. Even though you're changing to a different option list, that's still changing the input type. So any data that you had previously collected before you had changed it to a pick list would be lost. So if you do need to make that kind of change, you actually want to disable the field that you were first using. So for that scenario, that would be the select option list. You'd want to disable that field, then add a new field or duplicate the select option list and then change that to your pick list. All right, so before you build out that form, these are the thoughts that you should start thinking about is, what devices will your end users be using? What naming convention are you going to use for the form, as well as if you're going to use the name for the naming convention for the option list? How should you structure the form? So basically, where are you going to split up the data into different subforms? What element input types should you use for each question? And then where can you add form functionality or smart controls to cut down on human error? Here are just the list of all the input types, and we did go through these in that form just a moment ago, but I do include it in the PDF so that you can look at it later as well. All right, Ella, before we go into our form building, is there any questions?
There aren't any right now, but I'll let you know if there are.
All right, thank you so much. So here we have just the different option list types that we have. So it's the select, the pick list, and the multi-select. As you can see, the select is the one with the buttons on the actual form, where the pick list and multi-select go over the form structure. And here's just the example that I was telling you earlier about where I would take the social security number and I would update it, and I'd use that for my users to input their birth date, so month, date, and year, and I'd use the mask in that way. And the last thing before we go into that form building is the subforms. This is just another example of a naming convention that I would use, but I want to make sure it's clear to you that when you do add a subform to a parent form, if you're going to export the data in, maybe you're using an Excel feed or you're using the Excel view or whatever it is that you're using, it does separate the data. So here's an example where you can see that that first form here is the parent form, and then the additional form or tabs on this Excel feed are the subforms that are attached to that parent form. And then the other thing with the subforms is you do have some options when you're into the smart paging. One of them is, of course, to first select the form that you're going to attach as the subform. And then the next is the link mode. You have the option to link a subform as a single or multiple. The difference being is if you set a subform as single, then the user can only create one record for that specific subform. If you set it to multiple, then they can have multiple records, and that's really where that photo subform that I showed you earlier really comes into play. So they can take as many records as they need to. The other option that you have with this smart paging and adding subforms is you're able to decide if you want to see the data in a separate table view or if you want it on the form. Here's just the picture of the differences. With the separate table view, you do have to press the back button to go back to that parent form or to go back to the form that you started on. Without checking off that separate table view, then you're able to see it just creates a table underneath that form element, and you just tap that subform element to create another record if you need to. All right, so going into our form builder, this is the concept that I want us to go off of. You know, we've been given this task. We have to create a new form with these fields in it. So we need the user's full name. We want today's date. We want their email address, as well as we want to go and do a building inspection. To start, what we want to do is in our form builder, we want to create a new form. Now here's this form label, and this is what your user is going to see on their device, whereas the table name is where you want to use that naming convention. So I'm just going to call this January demo, and I'm going to uncheck that based on label because I want to use my naming convention, and I do _P so that I know that this is my parent form. Using our best practices that we talked about earlier in description, it's best to include a description for your users so they know what the form's about and what direction the form is going in, and if that's actually the form that they want to open. Underneath that, we have our form icon. So this is what the user will see on that form homepage, essentially. These are the default icons that we have, but maybe I wanted to add a different icon. And so what I would do is, what I did here is I Google searched for a building icon. Then maybe I want to use this icon, and I click View Image. Now once I've done that, that's going to give me the URL for that specific image. So I just copy that URL and I paste that underneath the form icons. And now I've changed the icon on the form to be this image. What you want to keep in mind with this is depending on how large the image is that you've selected from online will depend on how it looks in the home page. So make sure that once you've added the URL, you then sync your device and you go check out how it actually looks and how it'll be there for your users. Underneath that, we have our reference IDs. This is where I mentioned to you that best practice of customizing what the form looks like and what it says so that it's more helpful for the user. These customization options are really in the reference ID 3 and 5, and you can find that information here on our help desk. So this article is called iForm 7.0 Form Menu, and I do have this in our PDF, so you can find it there, but you can also open it at this time if you want to. Through these reference IDs, like I mentioned, this is where you can add a different color. Example of what that looks like is here in my other form. In reference ID 5, I've changed the color of the font and I've changed the color of the outer box so that it's a black color. Below that is the label icons URL. So this is where I was able to have our iForm Builder logo on the top of the form. I had connected my media storage, which is Dropbox. I connected that in the company info section, and then after I had done that, I placed a folder there called Form Icons. And from that, I'm able to, from this point, I can call to my Dropbox folder and call to that image. Below that's the page level JavaScript, and we're not really going to go into that at all today, but in our next session, we do cover that. All right, so you've created the basics of your form, and now the next step is to add a new input. So this label, like I mentioned to you earlier, this is what your user is going to see. So for this, going off of that example that we had, we wanted the user's full name. Now for data collection purposes, it's actually better to split up that data. And to make my life easier, now that I've created first name, I'm just going to duplicate that input and change the label to last name. All right, let's look at some other pieces of the criteria we have here. So we've got the full name. Now we need today's date. So we want to add a new input. And maybe I just want that to be called date. Well, as I'm going to show you in just a second, that's not a database-friendly term, and so it won't let me say it. Oh, actually, it did. Never mind, I lied. Oh, it's because I had this little space here. Okay, so let me try this again. All right, so this is the error message that you're going to receive if a term is not database friendly. So what you'll do when this happens is you just press OK, and you'll load your form builder. You'll find that form that you just had open, and load form. And now I'll have to take this data column name and I'll uncheck the box that says based on label, and I'll just change that to date_today. From there, I need to go into my input properties, and here I have date and date time. I may want to have the date time here. I also may want to make sure that this is a required field. Same thing goes for the last name and first name. Those are also required to my users. Next up on our requirements, we have to add the email address. So here we just add a new input, and we'll label this your email address. From there, you can go into your input properties and you can select email. Now that's great, but that doesn't have that functionality that we talked about earlier where you're able to spin through the different domains. So maybe I want to add that possibility to my users to make their life a little bit easier. I may also want to make this field required and have it send an email to the user. So by checking off this box, once this form is complete, it's going to send an email to this address. So from the email address, I'm going to go to my option list and I'm going to select Option List Manager. So if you're brand new to the platform and you haven't started to create an option list, you won't see all these options here. But what you will notice is once you press the plus button, it adds a new option list and it follows the same title all the time. So if you start seeing this with 1 and 2 and 3, then someone's creating a lot of empty option lists. So you can always replace those. But the first thing that you want to do here is you would create an option list name and just call this email. And I would do google.com, iFormBuilder.com, ZerionSoftware.com, as well as yahoo.com. I want to save my list. And I already had an email list here, so I'm actually just going to use that. But in your use case, if you've just created the email list, then you'll want to save it and then find it from the option list and then assign that list to the element. Then you'll want to save your form. And then you'll continue. I usually, I add a couple elements and then I go into my form builder and make sure that that form's looking properly. Excuse me. Ella, hey, any questions?
We do have one. One of our listeners is wondering if there's a mask for Canadian postal codes.
We do have a mask for the zip codes, and so if we were to go in the Add New Inputs and go under our input properties, we have zip, and here's the mask that it defaults to. I'm not sure if you remember the page that I had opened earlier, and I can actually bring that up here, but you can change and customize that mask to meet that need. So you can customize it to meet that Canadian zip code. Thank you, Ella. Is there any other questions coming in?
That's it for now.
All right, perfect. So I just added this zip code element, but maybe it's not, I don't really want it in here after all. So I'm just going to delete that input. Now I'm able to do all this, of course, because this form is not live yet. But if it was live, what I'd have to do is whatever element that I wanted to change, like I mentioned earlier, you'd want to disable that element. And that's found in that input properties section, and you just check off the disabled. Now you still see that blue little box around it, but that element's no longer collecting any data, it's not taking up any space on the device, and it's just basically sitting there and holding a place for where the data was previously collected. All right, so when looking at our requirements, the next thing that you're going to notice is that there are all these questions that are following that same topic, which is the university building inspection. So this is where we want to divvy up our form and create a subform. So I am going to add a new input, and I'm just going to label this as our building inspection, and go down to my input properties, and from the input properties I want to select subform. And once I've done that, I need to go down under option list and go into my smart paging and select the form that I want to be set as the subform. Now because of time, I've already created the form that I'd want connected, And so I can identify that it's the correct form because it says demo building inspection, and I have this C to say that it's a child. So I select the form. From there, I go into the link mode. Like I mentioned to you earlier, if you only want them to do one record, it's single. If you want them to do more than one, then you select multiple. Just for my preferences, I usually like to have the table on the parent form unless there are 200 or 20 different records that they're doing for that subform. If that were to be the case, then I'd do the separate table view. But that's just one of my preferences. So now that I've added that subform, I just want to save that. And to see what I have in that subform, like I mentioned to you earlier, I constantly open multiple tabs. And so here's the subform that I've already created. The first element that I had in there was the attachment. So this is actually I use this URL, and it's the campus map, and I place that in the attachment link for that specific form field. Underneath that, I've used pick lists, and I have added some smart controls in this pick list just so that it's actually a segmented option list. And so depending on what selection the user chooses from the campus location will depend on what building name is then displayed to the user. Underneath that, we have our building number. Now, one thing I didn't mention to you is that along with choosing the input type, deciding if it's required or if you have to disable an element, you also have the keypad. So these are all the different options that you can set for default for the different elements that you're using. For the number, I had set that to the number pad, but maybe there's a time when you are using your smart controls or you're using our smart table search. You may want to change the keyboard that the user sees and have it set as a text element, and so that's where you change that in the input properties. Underneath the building number, I have the location widget. Now, if you're going through some of these and you really don't know what they are, like maybe you didn't know what Manatee Works was, if you hover over what that input type is, then it'll give you an idea of the information that you need to know about that. Underneath that, as you can see, I used a text area. I then had the select option list. So if you go to the option list, you're able to see the different options that I had listed there. And we used the range. So when you decide to use the range element, you're able to identify that low value as well as that high value. So here I was just between 0 and 5. You may make yours a little bit larger, a little bit smaller, depending on your workflow. Then I used a subform element for those photos so that the user could take as many pictures as they needed. And I used the signature widget, and then lastly, I chose a read-only input type to set a timestamp for the users. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what that form actually looks like that we just built out. Now, like I said, I had previously built that subform, so I just wanted to make sure that you got the basics of the form builder and how to attach those parent forms. Okay, so now you should be able to see my device. And here you can see now that how obvious the color scheme is in changing just what colors you have in the reference IDs. And this demo building inspection, we'll go into that. We'll press the info button first. And as you can see, there's that description that we've added. And if I select a version, I had used the reference ID 3 to only include the modified date. I decided that I didn't want to have all that other information in there for my users. Once they're in here, I'm just going to go to Open and create a new record. So here's that first name field that we have. And because my last name's so long, I'm just gonna keep it short. That date and time, our email address, and again, that's based off of that pick list that we created earlier. And then I go into that subform. So here's that attachment that I used with that campus map. So the user can actually pinch and scroll in and see all this attached data or this map using the attachment widget. Then you have campus location. So this is that pick list that I told you where based off, depending on if I chose the north, south, west, or east would depend on what's shown in the building name. So here I have GHIJ, but if I go back and choose a different campus location, then you'll notice that I have ABC. The building number, so this was where I defaulted it to a number pad. And then I have our location widget. And reason for inspection, this is our text area. And here I used images within my select option list. Based off of what I selected here, depending on what would show underneath. So if I select no, then you don't see the range widget that we added, as well as if there's an immediate need for a phone call. You can actually use our third-party widget to make a phone call from the iForm app. Now, I didn't add that functionality here, but we do talk about that in our next session as well. And it's pretty neat to be able to use the third-party widget and call to other third-party tools. Then we have our multi-select. Here you can do a photo caption, just the photo, or a photo with annotation, as well as doing an audio note and capture that location again for where that user actually took that picture. And because I decided that I didn't want it on a separate table, this is where you select that subform again, complete that subform. If I had required fields, I wouldn't be able to submit that. And I'm just going to sign there. And then I'm done. It brought me back to that parent form. And if I want to assign this record to one of the other users, I'm the only other user in this profile, so I could assign it to myself if need be. Then just select done, and now that form is completed that we created.
Barrett.
All right, so before I hand it back over to Elahe to see if there are any questions, these are just the different form fields that we used, and we were able to add some of the smart table search, or we added some smart controls. We didn't add any smart table search, but you could have added that in your form as well. So in closing, our next session is actually February 10th, and it's going to be an awesome session. This is where our CEO, Zi Wang, is going to come in and talk to you about the next chapter for Xerion software and what you can expect in the future. And after that is on February 25th is the follow-up to this session, which is our Form Building 102, Creating Smart Forms. Here's the link that you can use to get to those recorded training sessions, as well as other information on our support options. If you need to contact Elahe or myself, our email addresses are connected from here. Any questions?
We have a few. So I wanted to catch up before you went out of Reflector, but you can probably talk through this as well. Just going over the different keyboard types that you can use in the form.
Sure. So I'll actually bring up the form builder. And if you go into your input properties, here's a list of whatever the default is, as well as the different options that you have. So you have your email address, which I probably should have set up here. So I might actually go back and set that to email. Oops. So then going back, you have for the keyboard, you have the default number, punctuation, URL, number pad, phone pad, name phone pad, as well as email address. Was there any specific questions on each individual one?
No, it was just the different types that are available.
Sure, great. That's a great question. When you start to use some integration with hardware too, you'll have to be able to identify what keyboard that you should set it as well. Any other questions, Elahe?
We do. Can you take multiple images on one element?
So that's where you want to have your, that's where you want to use a multi-paging subform. The reason being, if you were to just use the image element type, you would only be able to take one picture at a time. So allowing the user to have just a subform that has multi-paging, then that gives them the ability to take more than one picture. Now, if you're going to use the annotation feature, you can have multiple floating images on there. So the user can take as many as they need for that. Great question.
Sounds good. We have a few more. Is there any way to have the same on computers? So that, the forms are on mobile devices. Where does the computer come into that?
So we are a mobile data collection platform. So we are designed to just have your end users collect data on their devices, either Android or iOS. But we do integrate with some great tools, or you have access to our API as well as our post. And so if there is another form that you're using that's an online interface, you can integrate that data into Form Builder. So you can still have that interaction with the users who need to collect data from their computer versus the users who are going to use their devices. Another thing to keep in mind is BlueStacks. And let me actually open that for you. BlueStacks is a great way to emulate what it's going to look like on your on the device, and so you're able to download BlueStacks and use this to actually log into the iForm app and use the different input types that are available to you. So it shows you exactly what it'll look like.
Sounds
And
good.
I'll put that in our chat. So Ella, hey, if you don't mind sharing that with everybody.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah. What's the process like for uploading data from a CSV file?
So if you're going to use Smart Table Search, what a lot of groups will do is they will upload data using a CSV file. The way that's done, and the way that I suggest doing it actually, is by first going into the data and selecting the form that you are going to upload a CSV file for. So for instance, maybe I was going to use, here I have my demo Smart Table Search. So if I go into that specific form and I download the Excel feed, the reason I want to do this is because I want to get the data column names that I have for all my form fields. I need to make sure that those are completely accurate and so that they are compatible once I upload the CSV file. So now that I have opened up or downloaded that feed, I would just erase any data that's not needed, but I'd also erase all the metadata that's getting captured and just keep the data column names. From there, I'd put in all the data that I have, save this as a CSV file. Actually, of course, I'm not going to really save it, but you can see that this option's here. And then once I'm in that form, in that data actually, I can go and it says upload CSV data, and this is where I'd upload that file that I just created. Are there any other questions, Elahe?
That looks to be it for now.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule. I know that's not easy. And if any questions do come up, please feel free to send either one of us an email. And like I said, we'll be sending out the recording and the PDF to you in the next 24 hours. We'll probably stay on just another 3 minutes to see if any other questions come in, but if not, thank you again for taking your time out.